Night practice here at Barcelona after a pretty hefty thunderstorm a little earlier on, so the track bound to be greasy in places and obviously a lot less light for the drivers to pick their way through. But there's 90 minutes here for the various pilots to get used to the overnight conditions, and this will take us through till 10:30 tonight. We're broadcasting live as always here on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network. The calendar then, we've seen lots of racing already this year, and Dubai kicked things off for the 13th edition of that fantastic race in January. We then had over a month's break before heading to Silverstone in the cold and damp conditions to continue the Proto, the TCE and the GT series race. It was a GT-only series race in Spain earlier on in April at Navarra, and then visits to Italy at Imola and to Portimao 2 months ago. Brings us to Barcelona for this weekend. And we've still got Spa and the trip overseas to Kota to come. So plenty to keep us entertained as part of this Creventic promoted championship. And I'll include in that Joe Bradley, who's down in the pit lane for us during this session. And we'll speak to Joe in just a moment or two. But that is your calendar then for the season. And you're tuned to RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. 90 minutes then of qualifying to come. And alongside me is Andrew Marriott, who was downstairs earlier on looking after the practice and the qualifying sessions. You avoided the rain.
I did.
Joe might not.
He might not. What a stunning session it was there, with everything changing right into the very last lap of qualifying.
Yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Just looking at the calendar, of course, 2 championships in one. Here we've got the 3-round Continental Championship, Dubai, Portimao and Kota, counting towards that. We're hoping one day maybe another continent will get involved, maybe Australia, maybe South Africa. Looking forward if that happens. But this is the penultimate round of the European Championship, and some titles could be clinched here. Now, we're talking about the rain, Johnny. I mean, it really pelted down. We had lightning strikes quite close to the circuit. It was a spectacular show from him upstairs, wasn't it? But I think now the biggest problem would be rivers running across the track.
Yes.
I was just talking to Race Direction about half an hour ago, and they're saying there are 3 or 4 quite deep rivers running across the track, so they're going to have to watch that. I mean, one of the interesting things that happened was that the Caterham 7 race basically started under a safety car in the middle of that downpour. They quickly pulled them in.
Yeah.
Apparently they'll get an extra run tomorrow, or a longer race.
Yes, the Super 7 series supports the Creventic races at various points through their year. They went to Silverstone, they were at Imola as well, and obviously open cockpit cars, so you prep the car for a dry race potentially if you've not checked the radar. I think they run on road-going tyres though, and the cars started their formation lap, and then the heavens opened. We had fork lightning at one point, which was right in front of our commentary box, because there is a lightning conductor on the tower immediately opposite us. And I've never jumped back in my seat so quickly, I have to say. I don't think I've seen lightning that close up before. And the thunder was immediately after it, just to show that the storm was right on top of us.
Yeah. One of the interesting things in that qualifying session, though, Johnny, was that we had the R Motorsport Aston Martin, debutant in this Creventic series. Normally we see them racing in Blancpain, and they were battling with Jake Dennis at the wheel for that pole position. But we're seeing some lights here, which indicates cars are going out. Try and work out where the really wet patches are.
Yeah, well, I think the first job for us is car identity, although thankfully these cars are going to run with illuminated number boards, as in the race number, and also the positional number system is a big help too. I built Joe Bradley's part up quite largely a moment or two ago. Well, we can bring Joe now to the broadcast. Good evening, Joe. How's the weather down with you then?
And of course, when the weather's warm and the ambient temperature is up and then it rains, what does that mean? It means it goes very, very humid. We've got a very wet track. I'm not seeing any signs of it drying as yet. Cars just beginning to come out onto the pit area to start this nighttime session. Now, you might be thinking, what's the point in running in the wet and risking stuff? Well, the forecast for race is that we're going to have rain during the night sometime. So that means that this session takes on an even more vital importance. We're going to run these cars what is effectively on a dry setup with rain tyres. So it is pretty important. It's a 90-minute session, so we're probably going to see all of the drivers and all of the cars cycle through. We're just trying out the wet conditions. Whether we see a dry line developing remains to be seen. But right now, I'm not sure if that's rain or if it's just coming off the roof of the grandstands above the pits. But it's certainly very, very wet.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Paul Trustwell is also in the booth with us, and he's the expert on all things regulations and many other aspects of the race. Paul, at Le Mans, we know every driver has to race or practice in the night. Same here. How long do they have to do?
It's 2 timed laps is what the regulation says. So every driver during this hour and a half has to go out and do 2 timed laps. Definition of a timed lap is one that starts and finishes across the timing beam. So you can't start the lap or finish the lap in the pit lane. You have to do it out on the circuit. But apart from that, I think what Joe was saying is absolutely right. People are just going to be dialing themselves in. Obviously, in the night time, it's always important to make sure that the headlights are pointing in the right direction, that they're not pointing into the sky, they're illuminating the curbs adequately, and that the drivers feel comfortable in the car, and especially with the damp conditions, because what Joe didn't say as a consequence of the humidity is that the spray tends to hang in the air a little bit longer as well, so visibility becomes more of a problem, and your headlights, instead of working to illuminate where you're going, they just serve to light up the spray of the car in front of you. So a good opportunity for drivers just to get themselves familiar with conditions.
We've actually got a few lap times recorded, and Kenneth Heyer is at the top of our pile at the moment, son of the famous Capri racer Hans Heyer, of course, and Kenneth running in the number 1 Hofer Motorsport Mercedes, putting a time of just 2:23.7. I mean, this is way off what we expect. Be interesting to see what time. I think they'll be 15 or 20 seconds slower, don't you, Johnny?
Yeah.
Than they were. Nice onboard shots, incidentally, from the 34 car collection car.
Certainly, if that dry line that Joe Bradley was talking about doesn't emerge, then we're going to be way off the times we were seeing earlier on. And a reminder that the times we've seen this year are 3.5 seconds quicker than 2 years ago when GT's last were part of this event. So significant margin there that has been improved upon. That's partly because this track's been resurfaced between this year and last. So it must have been done over the winter period, I presume, ready for the Grand Prix that was back in May here at Barcelona. So a 1:45 point, what was it, Paul? 0.6? 0.8? The pole time.
The pole time was 1:45.877 by Tom Onslow Cole, set as Andrew was just saying, right in the closing stages of the qualifying session. Literally, I mean, he went through and started that lap 3 seconds before the checkered flag came out.
That's right.
If he'd have had the slightest bit of traffic on the previous lap, not only would he have not set what would have been second fastest lap, because his previous one was second fastest, good enough for the front row, but then he got onto another lap, and of course by then a lot of the other cars had already finished their session, so that was why he got a clear lap, because there was a lot of cars out there in the session. We had 48 cars qualifying, and so getting a clear lap was part of the issue, but by going out right at the end, most people, or at least a good percentage of them, had already finished doing what they were doing, so Tom had a nice clear track to run on.
Yeah. The Circuit de Catalunya is one of those places where the finish line's in a slightly different position from the start line, and had the checkered flag been displayed from the start line, he might not have got that extra lap. So he's fortunate that the finish line's relatively early on the start and finish straight.
Just trying to see if any of those streams across the circuit are obvious to us from, well, we were on an onboard track, now we've gone to our outside cameras.
Yeah, there's a little bit of higher ground further back. As we look at the track from the start-finish straight, we're on the third floor in the giant grandstand that you might be able to spot on the live stream from some of the onboard shots. Get a really good view of our commentary box up high to driver's left. to drivers right as they go down the main start-finish straight. There's some higher ground, which I think that's where the rainwater is going to work its way from that higher ground onto the track and cause problems maybe at that little right-hand kink at Campos Corner, and then down towards La Caixa, which is the traditional really good place to overtake late on the brakes, and a much tighter left-hander than it always was when they redid the configuration of this place in 2007.
On the screen briefly we saw the 117 KTM crossbow from the True team, which is really a quasi-factory team for KTM. The Austrian, mainly motorcycle manufacturer, actually the largest manufacturer of motorcycles in Europe, KTM.
Right.
Well, I guess Triumph must be second, but they also embrace some other famous European off-road bikes like Husqvarna and so on. But they've got, in one of the cars, got the actual designer of the car, and he's driving alongside with, I think it's a grandson, maybe the son, I'm not quite sure, of the founder, one of the three founders of KTM, because KTM is three initials of the three founders. But
yes.
Fastest at the moment in the Rofco car, Thomas Jaeger, German driver, who actually works for Mercedes-Benz in the racing customer support department. He's done that job for quite a long time as Thomas Jaeger. A lot of success at Nürburgring 24 hours and similar races. And we don't usually see him in the Rofco car, although we've seen him in a lot of other Mercedes of this type in the past, but drafted into that Rofco team, because normally we would have expected Jamie Campbell-Walter to have been in it.
Yes, I suppose so. And you were reminding me a little earlier on today that Stuart Hall was the 2013 GT Am champion as part of the World Endurance Championship.
Yeah.
That was a car that he shared with Jamie.
Yes,
and they both were co-winners in 2013. There's still quite a lot of spray out there. I'm noticing rooster tails from all the cars, particularly away from the main straight. And just to go back to your KTM point, some may be interested to know that those two cars powered by Audi engines.
Yes, which sit crossways in the chassis.
Yeah, little 2-litre turbocharged inline 4 Audi engines.
And an all carbon fibre chassis.
Weigh next to nothing.
Weighs next to nothing. Designed by Dallara.
Oh, right. I didn't know that.
Yes, designed by Dallara, not built, but somewhere in my notes I've got the name of the company that actually builds the chassis. But
well, Kiska is the Kiska design.
Yeah, he's the designer.
And there is a Kiska in the car.
Yes, it's the same man.
Okay, so that's not the son of that you were talking about?
No.
Right, Gerald Kiska is yes, the man who...
yeah, well, I interviewed him earlier in the season, actually.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, yes.
But they've got 2 or 3 lady drivers in that lineup as well at True Racing.
Yeah, Laura Kryhammer, who is Dom's sister.
Yeah.
Dominic Kryhammer, you may know from the World Endurance Championship races with Colin Collis' team in the CLM, the Enso CLM as it's called these days, and Naomi Schiff, who was born in Johannesburg, I think, but there's lots of different nationalities.
No, I think she is South African.
Yeah, but...
Well, I think she's certainly raced in South Africa as well.
Just give me a moment, because she's got quite an interesting backstory.
Yeah.
Here we go. Rwandan professional racing driver, born in Belgium, grew up in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and currently lives in Germany.
Well, there you are.
That's a lot of boxes ticked.
Person. And I think she's pretty quick, actually. She does compete regularly in the KTM race series. She's got various different categories, and there's some sprint races and some endurance races, a bit like Blancpain, I suppose. Yeah. And she's had quite a lot of success in that this year.
And no stranger to the Nürburgring Nordschleife either. Paul, you're looking at times coming in early on in this session.
You're just watching how they're dropping. We had Isaac Tutumlu Lopez quickest of all for a moment. He'd done a 2 minutes 4 dead. And then Thomas Jaeger went more quickly than him with a 2 minutes 02.9. Now Tutumlu has gone through again and done a 2 minutes 02.488. So times are just falling kind of on every single lap, as you would expect. It's not actually raining at the moment, although there is a lot of spray. I think the rain that Joe was describing was, as he suspected, just coming off the roof of the building above him. But if you want to just compare to Tumley's successive lap times, his first flying lap was a 2 minutes 08. Then he did a 2 minutes 4. Now he's in the 2 minute 2s. So every lap from him getting quicker and quicker. And as I say, Thomas Jaeger in the Ram Mercedes is second fastest with a 2 minutes 2.926. Third fastest is the 488 Ferrari, the Wochenspiegel team Monschau Ferrari. That's done a 2 minutes 05.8. And then fourth fastest, number 1, Kenneth Heyer, who I don't think has driven the car up until this point. All of the qualifying was done by Christian Frankenhout. So Kenneth Heyer now getting a go behind the wheel of the Hoffa Racing Mercedes. He's got down to a 2 minutes 8.8. And then behind him was the fastest of the two KTM's, car 116, which is the one that we were just talking about with the lady drivers in it, including Laura Kryhammer. But the guy who's actually in it at the moment, or was in it until he's come into the pits, getting fuel at the moment, was Reinhard Koffler. And he set the time for the 116 car, 2 minutes 9.431.
He's a factory KTM driver. He's their sort of star man. But just going back to Isaac Tumulu, he's very much a circuit specialist. I think he comes from Barcelona, a 32-year-old. And he's actually, Tumulu doesn't sound a very Spanish name, and indeed it's a Kurdish family.
Okay.
His father's Kurdish, and he is a big football agent here in Spain. So he does some of those mega deals, selling players to Real Madrid and so on.
And Barcelona, I would guess.
And Barcelona, yeah, whatever. Maybe more.
Turn your microphone on, Paul.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say, presumably taking his 10% every time he sells one, and that's why he can afford to get motor racing.
Maybe more even. But he's done a lot of racing in Spanish GTs, International GT Open and Superstars, and he's done the WTCC. He's raced in Super Trofeo. And we've seen him here in the past, I think, in 2015. He won the SPX class, but he was in the Lippert Lamborghini, which is in this race.
Yes.
But he's moved to Car Collection Motorsport. And we have seen him in the Car Collection car previously. And he drives with Ali Kapan, who's sort of, I think he's his driver coach. Ali Kapan, a very interesting Turkish guy who has held records for blind driving.
Really?
Seems a rather pointless operation.
Well, it might be useful at this time of night.
Ali did a bit of truck racing as well, and he's the guy I tried to get to show off his kickboxing skills, if you remember,
I do.
earlier in the season. He is actually the president of the Turkish Kickboxing Society, or whatever you might call it.
Showing a 24H endurance clipboard to Ali Kapan is much like showing a red rag to a ball.
Yeah, but he didn't really perform, I didn't think.
Well, he couldn't get his leg high enough.
He couldn't get his leg, no, he couldn't. But what I like about Creventic is all these interesting characters. Yeah, a lot of guys got great racing CVs, but you've got other guys that got other CVs and other things, and some hugely successful business. One of the great stories is there was Dr. Kirchhoff started in the 18th century making needles, and now, of course, they make that go-to company to buy road sweepers.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Extraordinary transition. I love those sort of stories.
So that's Johannes Kirchhoff's day-to-day business, is it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's selling road
it's
sweepers.
a family business, yeah.
And he is a doctor in what?
Oh, in engineering, surely.
You might be right. You might well be right.
I know, have you noticed?
There's the car, in fact,
They tend
watching
to
the live
use
stream.
it, don't they, in Germany? If you're a doctor of engineering, they tend to use that. So, we think of some... some team director, so...
Thank you, Andrew. We'll get to Paul Truswell in a moment or two with some more times, but let's hear from Dan Wheeler, who's down with Joe in the pit lane.
Well, let's not forget, 2017 Drivers and Teams TCE Touring Car Endurance Series champion, Synchro Motorsport. Dan Wheeler is here this weekend with the number 76. It's the brand new Honda Civic. However, Dan, it's not where we used to see it. It's right at the back, so I'd call me a detective, but maybe some problems?
There has been some problems. I think the pace we've got is going to be a little bit short of the front pacer anyway. We're going to hope for our normal reliability and rabbit, hare and tortoise type affair. But as you say, it's a brand new car. This is the first proper endurance event. It's totally built by the lads in their own time, and ladies, in their own time down at Honda Manufacturing in the UK. They've worked ever so hard, and we haven't had the opportunity to run it in an event like this yet. So there's always going to be teething problems.
Yeah, so is this the first major event that the car's done?
Yeah, absolutely. Done a couple of little races in the UK, not without problems. It's still a development. You know, the guys haven't got the time or the budget to keep going out and testing. They all do this in their own time. They can't take days off work for it, or rather, they have to take time off work for it. And so, you know, we have to do our testing in public.
So for all of our viewers and listeners who don't understand what synchro motorsport is, it's people who work at the Honda factory in Swindon putting their own time in. Is there any truth in them sneaking the parts out the back door of the plant?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any of that goes on, but no, the guys put in an awful amount of work during the week, and obviously at race weekends they stay late during the week, and yeah, I'm really grateful to be part of it as an outsider.
Yeah, it really is. Hashtag this is endurance, because the passion that your crew have is second to none, I think.
I think you're absolutely right. You know, bearing in mind they get absolutely no remuneration for it at all. They actually lose holiday time and pay their own meals when they're away. Obviously we try and help them where we can, but yeah, no, they're proper passionate, give it everything.
Great stuff, Dan. Dan, I'll leave you to focus on the night session, the night practice. I know you were communicating with your driver, so I'll leave you. Thanks for talking to us. Dan Wheeler, number 76, Synchro Motorsport Honda.
Yeah, and it's quite a small A3 class this weekend. Just a couple of cars, and one of which is normally known as a Cup 1 BMW. It's one of the M235i's, which has been put into A3. But I think Synchro might be picking out a few other cars on the entry list to be racing somehow.
We just went on board briefly with Johnny Molam, who seemed to have a horrible qualifying. He was right down in 13th place, but in the wet here, up to second place, just dropped to third actually now behind Jake Dennis. Johnny Molam, of course, more used to seeing racing in the States, now running the Red River Sports outfit and racing along there. We see the car now going through. Ivan Dunbar, Barnaby Grimes driving the two people that Johnny is mentoring over the last couple of years, and Bod has come on really well. Ivor still finds it a bit difficult to have made the transition from historic cars, and then Charlie Hollings, who's very much an FF Corsa driver and coach. He's the fourth person in that car, but see Molam showing his skill now, but great, and that's a new team as well to this championship. Only did the Silverstone race. Last season they raced in the Spanish GT Open with that car, with Ivor and Johnny. And they've also been racing an LMP3 car this season as well, with Johnny and Bon, who made an awful lot of money selling his business. Nice chap, and he was the guy that was put the money up for the film I made about Steve McQueen and the Man of Le Mans.
Oh yes.
That's how I first. In fact, I introduced Bon and Johnny, and got that combination together. So nice to see Bon now making the transition from what I call brick car club racing, really, to full international racing here at Creventic, because we just see the Swiss team Mercedes going through number 15 car.
Quite late coming out on parade, the number 15 cars. One or two of them deciding not to go out straight away. Tom Onslow Cole in the Ram Racing Mercedes has only just gone out, in fact. And then we've got three others who haven't gone out at all yet. Possibly somebody for Joe to investigate, and I'm sure he will enjoy chasing after Colin White. Number 178 hasn't been out. Remember, we saw that car come into the pits with a broken drive shaft.
Well, they thought it was a broken drive shaft. When I was down in the pits, they were taking the rear bodywork off and shining torches and things.
Right. Well,
you know, it might have been an input shaft in the gearbox or something like that. So it's obviously much more difficult to see. So,
as I say, that car hasn't been out. The other two we've not seen. The 259 car, which is the Munkhoff Racing BMW M4, Eric van den Munkhoff, one of the drivers of that car, he hasn't been out yet.
Paul, did we see that car earlier on.
Yes, definitely.
We did, okay.
Yes. And the other car that we have yet to see is the 888, an Audi RS3 in the TCR class, AC Motorsport. That car hasn't been out. Everybody else has been out, and in fact, as I speak, so the CWS Ginetta does go out. Right. Of the pit, so whatever the problem was, that seems to have been rectified.
Now the 888 car, was that the fastest TCR car in qualifying? Not TCE, but fastest actually?
No,
it was up there though, wasn't it?
It was up there. Who was quickest in TCR? Oh no, it was quickest in TCR. You're absolutely right. Yes, the AC Motorsport TCR was quickest in TCR, not in TCE, because that was the Colin White Ginetta, but the fastest TCR. And in fact, it's going to be a SP3 and TCR on the front row of the that class, because say Colin White's car is on the pole, and then second is the fastest TCR class car.
Jake Dennis has gone fastest overall in this wet session now. Man who tested a Red Bull here earlier in the year, and that team, our motorsport team, has a big link with Red Bull Racing, because part of the management of that team is Christian Horner's father, and the actual car is operated mainly by Jota Motorsport, who we better know for finishing second overall at Le Mans and so on with LMP2 car a couple of years ago, and Jota a top team. Ran those Zytex for so many years, and operating this R Motorsport team, which is new for 2018 and been running in the Blancpain series, but just dipping their toes in the Creventic waters here, and I think liking it a lot.
Yeah, a memorable win for them at Silverstone in the Blancpain endurance race at Silverstone earlier this year. The R Motorsport team, different team of drivers, but it was their team still, and run, as Andrew was saying, by Jota Motorsport. That car has come into the pits though. Jake Dennis has done his stint of 6 laps in a couple of little stints. Ali Kapan has taken over, but that's now second fastest, and third fastest, doing so very quietly and without any fuss at all, is the EDEX Sport Mercedes, number 17, Dmitriy Angelbert, has taken that car out and done a 2 minute 0.887 to go third fastest.
We're going to go back to Joe, because he's found somebody else to speak to down in the pit lane. Joe Bradley.
Well, the 2017 Barcelona 24 Hours was won by the NM Racing team. That was when it was a round of the Touring Car Endurance Series. A little bit different this year, but the NM Racing team, Nikolai Dmitriev. Nikolai, you've just been out in the Team Ginetta, the club number 215. Firstly, what are the track conditions like?
Well, the track conditions are complicated. It's half dry, half wet, because as before, there was a Caterham Championship, and the line is dry, but the off the line is wet. So you have to go both. If you go too much on the dry, you're gonna overheat the tires. If you go too much wet, well, you're gonna slip. So you're gonna.
So there are dry areas of the track out there.
Well, nearly the entire racing line is dry. So, well, that's what I've seen actually. So there's a lot of grip and there's a lot of traction. I mean, I only drove 3 laps, but it's enough to understand. And as the race will be tomorrow dry, I don't think there's a necessity to drive in wet a lot. So
I've seen a forecast for rain during the night, so that's going to make things very tricky, I would imagine. The conditions are going to be exactly what we see now.
Well, you asked me about driving at the night, yes?
No, I think we're going to have rain in the night, so this is important, I would imagine.
Of course, it is important. Every driver. So we're trying now to, in 1.5 hours, we are trying to fit all the 5 drivers to make some laps. But we expect actually dry. But even if it's going to be wet, with GT4 car, it's not so difficult to drive in wet. Well, from my experience, I mean, it's rear-wheel drive. You have to be careful with the gas. And basically you have to be careful with letting the car in the corner. So, but as you have ABS and traction control, which helps a lot in rain, I think we can all adjust after dry conditions of the track to the wet conditions.
And I would imagine the team want to win the TCE Endurance Series part of the 24 Hours this year.
Well, we are really looking forward to make good results in category and to make a good results in overall. But as this year there's a lot of GT3 cars, it's complicated. I mean, there's a lot of...
I mean, you're going to win your class.
Yeah.
I'm getting caught. Yeah, you're in the GT4 class, of course.
The GT4 class, we all the free practice that was before, and even qualifying, we are on P1, so we are basically feeling comfortable. But in the race, anything can happen. So it depends what will happen in the race, and the race is 24 hours long. So a lot of things can happen, and we have really quick drivers behind in GT4 cars.
That's what makes it hard. NM Racing Team stands for Niels Montserrat. Will Niels be driving also?
This year, unfortunately, he's not driving, but this year we have a lot of quick drivers, I mean, junior drivers, which are my teammates, which the people that I know from the past, which have really a lot of karting experience and then touring car and Formula car experience. So overall, we are really quick as a team, and even without Neil, we are trying our best, and looks like it's working out.
Great stuff. Thanks, Nikolai. No doubt we'll speak to you in the race, and good luck for the rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you.
Yeah, well, a Russian guy that's based down here in Barcelona, I believe, and speaking outstanding English, I thought. Must have quite an interesting backstory.
Yeah, it was good to hear from him as well, because it was a great story last year when Neil Montserrat and the team managed to come home victorious. But as you were saying there, that car running as a GT4 car this year isn't eligible for the TCE division, so it runs as a GT division car. But last year, I mean, it was Neil Montserrat who did the lion's share of the driving, but he brought along this team of young karters with him. Who, I mean, he was just introducing to circuit racing, really, and they'd gone through he kind of has a racing school or something that he runs, and they were like his star pupils in his racing school, and the reward was to come to Barcelona. But what then was the icing on the cake was taking home the winner's trophy. And it was a kind of a one-off shot because, you know, the 24 Hours of Barcelona has changed its flavour over the years, when it's kind of been a one-make Seat series to being a major GT3 series. And the 1 year that he happened to be in it with a Ginetta, which just happened to be the right car to have, he comes up, as I say, and wins a race. So it might be, I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to talk to Neil at some point over the course of the weekend, but great to hear there from Dmitriy Angelbert. And he's now handed the car over to Maxime Guimard to do his, he actually only had to do 2 time laps, but most of them staying out for a little bit longer than that, getting a bit more familiar with the conditions when they can.
I think the conditions are just getting a bit better with every lap. I'm just looking down here in front of us out of the box, and we're still getting a bit of a rooster tail behind the cars as they pass here, but I think it's drying out a bit. You see from that shot the rooster tails there. Still a lot of water on the circuit.
And a yellow flag being displayed down at turn 1 for some reason. Didn't see why, although and the message has now gone away, so the yellow flag has been displayed and taken in again, so possibly just a spin down at turn 1 for somebody.
And just going purple in sector 1, fastest of all in this practice session, the Australian Morgan Harbour, who is in that number 10 Lamborghini.
Yeah, the Liebherr Motorsport car. Morgan's been quick at the beginning of every session. He always kind of seems to be the first one in the car, and he's very quick. We'll see what the lap time is. Oh no, he's just coming to the pits at the end of a lap, but so it was quick at the beginning of the lap, but he's aborted the lap and brought the car into the pits for a stop.
So it's still the R Motorsport Aston Martin, fastest in this session, absolutely new to this series. Car collection, number 33 car second, then the EDEC Sport Racing Mercedes-Benz, followed by the Ram Racing car of Onslow Cole. Anthony Lambert currently in the Lippert Lamborghini we just mentioned. Charles Espinal sixth. The FF Corsa car has now got Bonamy Grimes driving it. As I said, the founder of Skyscanner. Rel Goth is in the Rofco car now. That car is in 8th place. Malicelli 9th in the Bohemia Energy with Scuderia Praha, Team Prague if you want to translate it, and 10th Nico Menzel, second generation German driver, BMW factory driver actually, Menzel, in the Waschenspiegel team at Monschau Ferrari. So we've got 3 Ferraris up there in the top 10 at the moment.
And still no sign of either 259, the BMW M4 from Munkoff Racing, or 888, the AC Motorsport Audi RS3. So we've had half an hour of the session, only got an hour to go, and as we were hearing there...
I do wonder if Joe could get down to the 888. Obviously, it was the fastest TCR car. And how many drivers has that got in it, Paul? Just check, because he's got to cycle them all through, haven't they?
Exactly so. And as Dmitry was saying, when you've got 5 drivers like his car has, this is the Vincent Rademacher car. It's got 4 drivers altogether. Vincent Rademacher, Stefan Perrin, Alexander Renato, and Laurent Piguet. And so none of them have actually been out in the car yet. And the other one yet to be seen is 259, which is also a 4 driver. So by giving themselves just an hour, they are potentially not going to qualify some of their drivers. Should point out that there are facilities within the regulations that if you don't do your night laps, you can write a letter to race director Martin van der Pavert, and he will give you a waiver if he thinks it's appropriate and if your letter is sufficiently neatly typed and in the appropriate grovelling tone.
They do actually do that at Le Mans, don't they? And people
yes.
do have the letters accepted.
Yeah,
I've noticed in the past.
I've recently managed to get sight of some of these letters, and literally some of them are just written on the back of a piece of A4 paper, where they've taken the result sheet and then written, "Dear Mr. Race Director, my name is, and the reason I didn't do what I was supposed to do is because." And then when they give a good enough reason, then very often that's accepted. And in conditions like this, if you've done night racing before, if you've done a Barcelona race before, the race director will take into account your experience, and most of the time he will grant a waiver, but at the very least he can put you to the back of the grid.
Yes.
What he can do is to stop that particular driver from doing any nighttime laps, so in effect constraining him to drive during the daytime if he feels there's a concern about not having done sufficient qualifying laps to actually qualify him.
Paul, I do notice, actually look at the timing screens, that a lot of different drivers are cycling through, actually. Nobody's doing any long stints, I don't think. You've got obviously your wonderful system here, which will tell you, but I think you'll find that drivers are changing on a very regular basis.
Absolutely. The EDEX Sport Mercedes, number 17, is already on its 3rd driver. So we had Dmitry Engelbert driving, we had Patrice Lafargue, and we now got Marvin Klein behind the wheel of the number 17 car. Not only is it onto its 3rd driver, but it's also going quite quickly because it's 3rd fastest in the times.
Could be about to see something a bit special as well, because Jarmo Berman's just clambered on board the number 5 Ram racing car, and on an outlap he did an absolute best middle sector. That's pretty good.
Must have got the tyres up to temperature then.
Absolutely.
I'm going to hand over to Diana Biggs now. We don't often see her in the commentary box, but
I don't know, this modern day. I think she's been there several times over the last 12 months, marking her anniversary this weekend with RSL. So good to have Di back, and she's already done a stint in the pit lane, of course, so she'll be in the booth very, very shortly. As I speak, the 620 Aston Martin with its 6-litre V12 engine is being polished. It's having the screen cleaned. Still don't know exactly why the team have elected to run with 620 this weekend. I think it's previously been car 76 when it did very well in a Blancpain race earlier on this year at Silverstone. Did they win, Paul?
Yes, they did. Yes.
Okay.
Although there was an altercation with stewards and they were going to be disqualified, but I think they got away with it.
There is drama in the fueling area here at Barcelona because I'm being told there's a fire for the only car that currently sits in the fueling area. So if you're on the live stream listening to us in sound and vision, we're live trackside as always, covering the Creventic Racing, the 24H series, and that car, which is a Mercedes, I think, or no, actually, no, it's not. It's the 178 again, which has already had dramas today. That's the Colin White car, which qualified in 3rd position in the for the TCE race tomorrow and Sunday. And car 178 has just had a bit of a drama in the pit lane in that it has caught fire, we think. Also, Andrew's telling me a little bit about KTM here, because the T in KTM is Trunkenpolt. Is that what we're saying? Originally only the T in KTM.
Yeah, so
hang on a minute, because you're not going to come out that way. Paul, you talk.
yeah, so Trunkenholt is one of the 3 drivers in the car, and let me just find the car in the list. So number 116, isn't it? So Hubert Trunkenholt is the T, and Gerald Kiska is the K.
But I thought that Hubert was the grandson, but actually he's the nephew, and I have to say a big thank you to Right Turn Lover, who gets so much information and often corresponds with us, and we do thank him a lot for that. So he puts us right, not for the first time, I have to say, so thanks for that. But great organisation, KTM, as I said. And interesting that they've gone into 4 wheels as well as bikes, and of course they've got a MotoGP team now. They've always had one of the best off-road bikes. They've run the Dakar countless times, so great to have their racing team here and that wonderful connection with the founding family.
Do we know perhaps if Laia Sants ever drove a KTM? Because that would make a good link, wouldn't it? No, she never did. Right. New fastest lap, Jelmer Berman, you were right to draw attention to his speed on his outlap.
Didn't take him long.
Served notice of what he intended to do, and he is the first driver to get underneath 2 minutes of a lap time around the Barcelona circuit. 1 minute 59.626, and I think that is merely notice for what's going to continue to be times continuing to drop. Suggestion being that it will conditions will improve as the session goes on. It was Nikolai Dmitriy, wasn't it, who was telling us how there was a dry line and areas where you could really push on.
Well, Jelmer's won a race this year, remember? He was victorious at Dubai back in January when he won the 24 hours in the Middle East with Abdelaziz Al Fazil, Hubert Haupt and Gabriele Piana, the Italian, who has been doing plenty of racing this year, although not at Barcelona this weekend. Even more difficult to tell the exact colour scheme of the FF Corsa Ferrari at night, but I assure you it's dark blue. And Andrew Marriott agrees.
Can we call it midnight blue, do you think?
We can, well, not quite. in another few hours we can.
Okay, we can call it 9:30 blue.
Tomorrow night you can.
Yeah, right, I will do that, even though nobody will be listening.
You could tweet it.
I'll tweet it, midnight blue.
At Paul Truswell. That's where everyone's going to get that update, isn't it? Plus, there will be live stream coverage of the various cars that have onboard cameras this weekend, 10 of them in total.
And hopefully most of those will still be running.
And also, I was told that the YouTube coverage of the race will mean that people can choose which car they're watching at any time. I think there'll be live streams for all 10 cars.
Yeah, so if you have a particular favourite, you can watch it, and you can kind of do your own mixing as well, because there will be some people operating which, if you're on the live stream, there'll be some people operating so that they decide which car you're watching from. So they'll try and identify any incidents that they think are noteworthy by putting you on board with the right car at the right time. But if you think you can do a better job, then just go onto the individual YouTube channel to do so.
Well, Binksy's going to be doing that. You're not going to sleep tomorrow night, are you?
No, I'll be awake all night.
Yeah, thought so.
Keeping on top of it with Paul.
Indeed.
No, I'm not really.
Can't wait.
Matt Campbell's gone pretty quickly that time around as well, so he's now second fastest in the 911 Porsche. And I thought Herbert were, I don't know, a little bit off the pace earlier on today, weren't they? The 9th fastest in quali?
Yeah, but they never are they? They're never right on it. Matt Campbell's a bit of a ringer in that he's not a regular driver with that team, regular Porsche driver, of course, and Herbert do welcome guest drivers in, especially Antipodean ones. I mean, I think it's just an indication that Matt is probably the quickest driver out there, and the conditions are getting better and better. Matteo Malicelli goes third as well. Both those guys are tweaking into the pits at the moment. Jelmer Berman, I would imagine, handing the Ram Mercedes over. Matt Campbell in with the 911, having he's the third driver. Daniel Alleman and Ralph Bone have both done their laps already, and Matteo Malicelli means that the number 11 Ferrari is actually the first driver to have done all their night qualifying now, because they've only got 3 drivers: Jiri Pesaric, Josef Kral and Matteo Malicelli. They've all done their laps, so it may well be that number 11 gets pushed away, and if it does, that's a good sign for them.
Well, they had, if you remember, they had some problems earlier because Josef Kral went off in free practice, if you remember, so they were quite late getting out in qualifying, and obviously in the first practice session that we had. So they've obviously got back up to speed pretty quickly, and as you say, making quite good progress now.
Yeah, Malicelli, I mean, he's a talent to watch, and you never quite know what he's going to do next, frankly. And he was hanging the tail out for much of the qualifying session earlier on, almost making up for lost time. We're in a situation now, we've got A6 Pro cars, first, second and third. Certainly a situation we didn't have in qualifying in the dry, because the A6 AM cars that run very slightly lighter than the A6 Pros in an effort to equalise them. That's a deliberate thing that Creventic do. We had AM cars far outnumbering Pros in qualifying, but in the wet weather conditions, it is Pro, first, second and third. Joe Bradley's lining up the next interview for us, and I am raring to go. Just need the final say-so from Joe. I think we're up to speed, are we not? Go on, Joe.
Yeah, well, you told me there was a possibility of a barbecue going on at CWS. Paul May was in the car. Paul, we had a report that there was a conflagration on the 178 Ginetta. Is that correct?
Yes, I was sitting in the garage, biding my time, waiting to be filled up, and suddenly looked behind me to see flames. So I think the guys probably let a little bit of fuel out the side with the exhaust pipe on the side. They shot up in flames, and the fire extinguisher people were very quick and put it out. So
it's had no detrimental effect to the car. The car's back out.
None whatsoever. It was put out very quickly. Yeah, a bit of a shock, but it's all fine.
Yeah. And so, Paul, you've been out on track.
Yeah.
It's very dark. It's very damp and slippery. How tricky?
Actually, I really enjoyed it. It was. Yeah, it's quite surprising how some of the fast cars going, how slow they are out there, but there's a bit of a line now through there as well, so I found it pretty good actually. I enjoyed it.
And we're going to have a bit of rain during the night is the forecast. Are you down to drive in the night at all, do you know yet?
No, my luck, yes, I would think so. I think so, yeah.
We've seen you out in a Porsche many times. I'm not sure I've seen you in a Ginetta before, have I?
We did it in Dubai. That was our first time we've done it in a Ginetta. We just... with my Porsche, it's the whole funding's down to me, so it's a bit easier this route. So
with the Porsche, you're running the team, you're running the logistics. This way, you just come to Colin, write a check, and jump in the car.
Well, I remember standing in Kota with a car there, and everybody out there testing with no gearbox, waiting for it to arrive. And I'm thinking, do I need this? So it's a lot easier this way.
You're enjoyable.
No, I am enjoying it. I'm missing the Porsche. I've still got the Porsche, but it's a supercar. But you know, it's an easy route, this route.
Well, if you're enjoying it, Paul, that's the main thing. Great to see you and James. Yeah, it's your brother, isn't it, James?
My son.
Your son, of course.
My son, yeah.
It's great to see you guys out in something. As long as you get out in anything.
Well, we love it. We really missed it. So we're really enjoying it.
Yeah, well, we love you to have you in the 24th series. Great to see you. We'll saw you over the weekend. Best of luck. We've had all the bad luck now, mate.
Is that a promise, Joe?
No, of course it isn't.
I can say
anything can happen. It's a Colin White Ginetta.
Because if you, all right, steady on. If anything else happens, then you're going to be top of the list for the man that he's going to come over and have a right old go. But that has filled in some blanks, so thank you for that, and we wish them well for the rest of the weekend. They're owed some good luck, certainly.
Yeah, I think Colin said it, didn't he, when we spoke to him earlier on. He's just got to work on the reliability, and just occasionally things do go wrong. We're focusing on Rick Breukers at the moment on the stream. That's the red Ram Mercedes, number 5, which Rick has taken over now from Gelmer Berman. The other driver who has yet to be in it is Remon Vos. So they're going to leave it until the darkest part of the night before they put Remon in the car. So Remon Someone will be the fourth driver to drive that one. But it is the quickest car, courtesy of Jelmer Berman. And we've got Alfred Renoir now out in the 911 Porsche, having taken that car over from Matt Campbell. We said that car had come into the pits. The Matteo Malicelli is on an outlap, but I'm showing that he's not changed driver, which of course he doesn't need to change driver because they've done all their driver cycle already. Peter Limehouse is at the wheel of the R Motorsport Aston Martin. Except that car is in the pits at the moment, but Peter Limehouse brought it in, so my guess is that car will be going out with its fourth driver in a minute. Who's the fourth driver of the Aston Martin? It's Andreas Benziger. So Benziger is the final driver who should be getting to the car at the moment. In TCE, Touring Car Endurance, an SP3 car leads the way, and it is that car that James May was driving before it caught fire. That was the quickest car. Alvaro Bajo is second quickest in the leading TC R-Class car. That's the Monlau Competition Seat, except it's not a Seat, it's a Cupra. Erstwhile Seat, but now they're known merely as Cupras. And the times that those two have done are 2:10.343 for the Ginetta and a 2 minutes 10.749 for the Cupra. And then third fastest in the TCE division is car number 120, which is another of the Cupras. This is the BPM racing car.
What's the priority here then, Paul, do you think, in terms of... are you wanting to put somebody in for a long stint, or is the priority cycling through your drivers? I know we sort of covered this earlier on in the session, but it's tricky with the track being so greasy, at least early on in the session. You wouldn't necessarily want to put a gentleman out in those tricky conditions.
No, exactly. So I think from our motorsports point of view, and I suppose to an extent, because Ramon Vos hasn't been out either, you put the gentleman out when the track is at its driest, even though it's going to be dark, but you're not going to protect your gentleman against being driving in the dark. I mean, part of the reason he's here is for the enjoyment of driving at night, because I mean that's something that you can't do in your average club racing. So,
and the other thing is, there was a suggestion, wasn't there, that it will rain tomorrow night during the race. So
well, it's only Joe that's been saying that.
I'm going to agree with him now.
We've heard it. So really, you want to get them to get as much of that experience and get ready for that if it does happen.
If it does happen. Yes, I mean, I don't know enough about the weather here. I mean, it was... you could certainly sense something was coming. I mean, when that storm was coming, I briefly went down into the grandstand because I wanted to watch the start of the Caterham race, of the Super 7 race. And I thought it's not very pleasant out here because it was beginning to blow up a bit, and I thought actually it's blowing up a bit. And that was before the awning started flying and the verandas started getting broken and all the kind of other things that were going on. And then the weather started coming down. But what I don't know was how predictable that rain was coming in, whether it was kind of headed straight for the circuit or whether you could have predicted that if you had the appropriate...
Well, I had been in the pit lane probably about 40 minutes before, and I saw the dark cloud, and I think I mentioned it, there was a big dark cloud, but I honestly didn't think it would rain the way it did. It was about half an hour later, so it was a bit of a surprise.
Absolutely. I mean, if it would rain that heavily during the race, I'm not sure that they could have continued it. I'm not even sure that it would have run behind the safety car because it really was a deluge.
It was teeming down, and we wondered at one point whether there were hailstones as well, because it was bouncing off the newly resurfaced track here. And then it eased a little bit, but continued to rain. I can't see on the forecast any thunderstorms tomorrow night. It's passing showers, basically, and they're intermittent, actually now as early as 10 p.m, overnight through till, well, maybe even the odd one Sunday morning as well, around 8 o'clock.
Is that the BBC
It's
website?
not.
It's not, okay. Because I just wonder whether they've modified their forecast based on what Joe's been saying about the rain. So they've probably been listening to him and saying, oh, it's going to rain in Barcelona tomorrow.
Well, they use an awful lot of different sources to the BBC and other weather apps too, and Joe Bradley is one of the top 5 in their list. I know that for a fact.
Does he want to defend his case here?
Always. And it depends whether I let him.
I was too busy talking to Laura Cryhammer about the KTM, so I don't know what you guys are talking about. Can I talk to Laura instead?
We were talking about how good you are at forecasting weather, Joe.
Well, a former team manager, I'm pretty good at reading clouds. And that's the forecast I saw. I know you disagree with me.
Ask Laura what she thinks. Is it going to rain?
Laura, I know you've been out on track. We're talking about the weather, and I've heard that it's going to rain during the race. So tonight is pretty important. Have you heard anything about a weather forecast?
Honestly, I've heard so many different forecasts. I mean, this racetrack obviously is close to the sea, so weather can change pretty quickly, and we just take what we get, right?
Now that was an intelligent forecast. Geography and all sorts in there. Let's talk motor racing, Laura. You've been out in the KTM. The reputation of the KTM crossbow, the Expo, is very, very tricky car in dry conditions. How tricky is that car to drive in the wet?
Honestly, I was surprised right now. The car is super cool to drive. It feels very safe. It's the guys did an amazing job with the setup. Yeah, it feels great, and it's a lot of fun to drive it, so it's fine.
How different is the track condition tonight to how it was this afternoon in dry conditions?
Actually, it's drying up now, right now, so it's getting drier every single lap. So, I mean, the difference is not too big.
Now, the KTM has been known to be a little bit fragile in the longer races. So how are we going to get this car through the 24 hours?
Yeah, it's a question of consistency, right? And I think it's important to find a good average speed, but the car, we've done a lot of improvement, right? The engineering and KTM has done a lot of improvement on the car, and I'm sure that the car is able to take the 24 hours. I mean, it's been able to take the 24 hours Nürburgring, Nordschleife, so we know that the car is able to do that, and we'll prove it tomorrow.
And is it a case of being, as a racing driver, is it having to be disciplined and keeping to the plan, not being dragged into a race on track as if it was a 10-lap race? You've got to stay disciplined and let, the crazy guy go by, or the crazy girl, in fact.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. It's about consistency and discipline and making the right decisions, and maybe overthinking something that racing driver in a sprint race doesn't do necessarily. But it's a 24-hour race, and there's so much which can happen. Even 30 seconds before the end, everything is possible. But as a team, you just want to push everyone through, and you just do a consistent job, and that's what we want to do.
Great event, isn't it? It's going to be a big crowd tomorrow. Does that have an effect on you when you walk out on the grid? Massive grid, big event. Does that get the nerves? Do you get nervous?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's the first time on a 24 hours Creventic series event, and I really enjoy it. It's very well organized. I love the people, I love the track, and it's really nice. And of course, if there's some crowd here as well, makes you feel special, or makes you feel like somebody actually understands that you're giving it all out there, and that's cool.
I'll ask you the same question on Sunday lunchtime. We'll see if Laura's smiling on Sunday lunchtime. Great to talk to you, Laura. Best of luck for the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Bye.
Laura Cryhammer, who's no stranger to a crowd, because I mean she's done enough stuff at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, which is free entry if you go onto the Nordschleife for VLN races, and they get quite a crowd up at Brunchen and other places too. But interesting point that Laura makes there. We are only 15 kilometres away from the Mediterranean here. We're not quite on the beach, but therefore the weather might be a little more radical than where we inland in Madrid, for instance. So it's certainly a point to make that. And as I say, we are expecting rain during the race, but maybe not quite as intense as it was a couple of hours ago, an hour ago, indeed. So now the session has been tempered, Paul, by a code 60, but you reckon this is more of a drill
it's
rather
an
than
exercise, yeah. Okay. And I've had that confirmed on the screen as well. So they like to run a code 60. partly just to get drivers used to the fact that there is this procedure, and to make sure that their own systems and procedures work so that they can drive the car at a constant 60 kilometres an hour. But more importantly, it's the race director who wants to make sure that all the marshals have got their Code 60 flags and they can illuminate them correctly, and that staff who need to get onto the circuit vehicles, can get onto the circuit and see their way to a particular part of the circuit. Almost certainly we will have a medical car on the circuit as well during this Code 60. And again, don't be necessarily alarmed, that will just be part of the drill. Normally they try and get through it as quickly as can, 10-15 minutes maximum of this, but enough time to get a circuit vehicle onto the circuit to a supposed incident, and then to get back to, say, full course running as quickly as they can. As until this point, neither the free practice session nor the night practice had any cause for Code 60, so let's hope that continues to be the case as well.
And I remember having revisited last year's race, because you can go and watch that if you want, and it's also available on our archive on the Radio Show Limited network. At least the first couple of hours, we didn't have a Code 60 because the race was able to be dealt with local yellows, people abiding by that warning, and some terrific work by the local marshals as well in clearing the incidents.
And the fact that it was touring cars only, I think, probably helped as well. So there weren't the massive speed differentials that you get when you've got GT cars and touring cars on the track at the same time.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, it is always, you know how much I like having green racing and not interrupted by these kind of interruptions, although the teams themselves actually enjoy having this a lot of the time, because it gives them an opportunity to roll the dice. It gives them an opportunity to use a bit of strategy, and then afterwards it'll either work out for them or it won't work out for them.
A bit like playing chess, isn't it?
Not, I suppose in a way it is, yeah.
Well, you never, during the race, you don't know when the Code 60's coming, do you?
No,
so
exactly.
if you're playing your strategy
But you
game,
do get those teams that, without hesitation, will pit at every Code 60, and that only allows you a half fuel fill, so you might have to do it a double stop as long as the Code 60 is long enough. Joe was saying something in my ears there, but I have the inability to speak and listen at the same time, so you'll have to repeat that, I'm afraid, on air. Joe?
I've got Joseph Krall at the number
excellent.
11 Ferrari.
You can ask him about this morning then.
I am. I've got a lot to talk about as Joseph and I. Joseph, the Scuderia Praha Ferrari, always at the very forefront of these long-distance 24-H series races. You started the weekend off in great style. You've had a lot happen. Firstly, tell our listeners and viewers how the weekend started this morning.
What I have to say is pretty tough weekend for us, because during the free sessions we had a little issue with brakes, because when we changed the brakes there was a, let's say, not really proper procedure when I jumped in the car. Then we crashed it in the first corner, which was big shunt. I just went straight from the pit lane straight to the barrier, let's say, because there were no brakes. So it was a really scary moment. Luckily the car wasn't as damaged as we thought. It looked really bad, but in the end we managed to repair it. So now we are back, which is important.
Great work from the team, wasn't it? Fantastic work.
Exactly. It was really hard job, but guys made it in 3 hours, so we still managed to do the free session just before the qualifying, just to check that the car was fine and everything was working fine, which obviously it was, which was really important. Then in the qualifying, it was just really competitive, and against all the other marks, we were a little bit struggling in that high heat which was here, but now on the wet, the car feels really good.
Yeah, it's very good. Paul just told me in my ear, and that's what you meant when I walked in to talk to you. You went, Matteo's P1, Matteo Malicelli, just put the car quickest in this nighttime practice. You guys are starting from the third row of the grid. You're not quite used to that, are you? You're usually on the front row pretty much, so it's a little bit different. But like you said, Joseph, very competitive field here for the 24 hours.
That's true, yeah, it's not something what we are used to, but anyway, we were expecting this weekend will be really tough, because as we could see, the other drivers and cars and the teams, they really teamed up well, and we were really expecting let's say, someone who was coming back for Barcelona, so the grid is really strong, and for us it's just to really put it together and finish the race, which is probably the the recipe for the win and for the podium, not to make any mistake and just keep the pace what we are able to do.
And you're taking it really seriously. The car already in the garage. And Joseph, I'll keep you no longer. Your team manager needs you. Thank you, Joseph Grell, because this is how serious these guys are taking this. They are now calling a finish to anything on track, but right now they're in the pit garage and they're working on their driver changes. They're pretty well drilled in driver changes. It's not like this is their first endurance race. These guys know how to win 24-hour races, but they're still practice. Now that's the attention to detail which makes a team like Scuderia Praha win these long-distance races.
They were winners last time out at Portimao 2 months ago, and they have won this race as well in 2014, but that was in a Ferrari 458 rather than the newer 488.
The other thing that they do is to just use a 3-driver lineup.
Yeah, that's a relatively new thing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I was wondering whether Joe was going to ask, actually. In some ways, 3 drivers is quite enough to do a 24-hour race. I mean, at Le Mans, for example, you only have 3 drivers in the regulation. You're not allowed to have 4. But in this event, you can have up to 5 drivers. Now, obviously, depending how the team is being financed, the fact you have 5 drivers may well go to contribute to the coffers of the team. But a team like Scuderia Praha, the financing is predominantly provided, I think, by sponsors, so they can actually do something with the money. As I say, they run the thing with just the 3 drivers, but it does mean that the driver change, they only have to worry about getting one driver out and the other driver in, so there's only 3 different drivers to change as well. So if they can make that quick, then they're going to potentially improve matters.
And I think also being a team that is well used to one another. I mean, this is something that you find at Herbert as well. We haven't got one Renault twin this weekend, but he's replaced by a very fast guy. But I mean, that combination of Ralph Bone, Daniel Alleman, and normally Alfred and Robert Renault, they just know how each other ticks.
They know how they interact. They know how they're all their strengths and weaknesses, don't they? And the familiarity of knowing what someone will do the job they say they're going to do, and they'll feel comfortable knowing that that's going to happen, well, obviously gives you a lot more confidence.
And you might even get to a stage where at the end of your stint you're always handing over to the same guy. I mean, it might, it becomes that well rehearsed, so you know exactly where you need to...
Again, it all goes down to the thing of making a driver comfortable. The more comfortable he is, the better performance he'll give. So any fine-tuning that you can do all adds to that. And
it almost becomes things like a driver change reliant on muscle memory rather than, oh, what am I doing next again?
Green flag. So
how long was that code 60?
11 minutes, thereabouts. Wasn't a huge amount of time. 50, in fact, just over 10 minutes, under 11 minutes. So
I think they were aiming for a 10-minute code 60 somewhere along the line.
As I say, that was job done, and we did have some medical vehicles on the circuit as well for a little while.
It's a very realistic simulation, isn't it? I like how they do it.
Well, as I say, because the circuit is staffed by local Spanish marshals, the RACC that runs the circuit here, and the circuit staff, the guys who have to go out and rebuild barriers and so on. I mean, Creventic arrive at a circuit with an awful lot of people, but they still rely on the local infrastructure, and a lot of circuits won't have the opportunity to practice code 60s at any other stage. So it's important for Creventic and, as I say, Martin van der Pavert and the rest of the race control crew to make sure that the people that they're working with know what they're doing. And
to do it in a live environment like this is the perfect scenario, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, yes, I'm sure we won't get through the whole race without a code 60, so it's important to have a practice at some point.
And Creventic, rather, is that gracious about where we are in the world, as in Catalonia, that one of the flags they use is the Catalonian flag. It's not really, it's the debris flag, but it just happens to be yellow and red, and it's just a nice little sink-in point, I think. We might see that through the course of the race. There's been a drama for the VDS Racing Adventures Mark Focus V8. It's got to the end of the pit lane, but is now being pushed the wrong way, and it's being covered by yellow flags by a brave marshal there. This is marshal power, by the way, so it's presumably lost any sort of forward locomotion right at the end of the pit lane. And this is going to have to be a delicate operation. So yellow flags in the pit lane rather than on the track. at the moment.
Yes, I think at first he did get out of the, well, certainly beyond pit out, and has now been pushed back in, which is why they were being pushed by marshals, because that was the safest place for the marshals to push the car. Once it gets back into the pit lane, then it's over to the team to recover it and push it back into its garage. Now, the Mark VDS car, I went and had my own little pit walk earlier today, and I think it's the very last garage. Joe will be able to confirm that, or it may be too far, but it's certainly close to being the very end pit in the line. Diana will remember, because you've been there. It is the last one, is it? Right,
yes.
yeah, so it is the very last pit.
So if you're in the pit lane on your own and something happens this end and you've got to run up there, it takes you quite a while.
Yeah, but, you know, you've got long legs, you can...
No, my legs are short.
A long race to get there, though.
Well, you've got to navigate your way up, haven't you? When the pit lane's full, and actually that was the interesting thing earlier on in qualifying, when a lot of the teams were basically coming in and staying in the pit lane, waiting on time to go back out and try and get their laps in. The pit lane actually was really, really busy, and it was just interesting. So you're thinking, oh, there's a lot happening, but there wasn't. They were just doing the checks or changing drivers and waiting for that opportunity. But it just shows, you know, when you've got that many teams and cars, how busy it is in the pit lane. So just navigating your way up, you do have to be a bit careful because there's stuff happening.
And we are in a situation this weekend, are we not, that we've got more cars than garages? So there are a couple of cars in
they're all
garage.
in quite tight spaces.
So sort of stable mates rather than teammates, because you might be in there with someone you've never met before, and that's again akin to Nürburgring 24, where sometimes you get 7 cars in the same garage, and it's about working around each other.
And it's quite interesting, obviously, being in the pit lane. So when you do go into the garage, you get used to it by the end of qualifying. But when you first start, you're trying to find everyone, and you go, oh, they've disappeared, you can't find them, so you're trying to find the right person. It makes it a little bit more tricky.
And that's something to be thought about as far as strategy is concerned as well, because you don't really want to be double stacking your cars and potentially losing time that way.
You can pay extra and get a single room, as it were. You know when you go on holiday and you have to pay a single room supplement. So it's the same kind of thing here. If you pay extra to prevent it, they will give you a garage on your own. And presumably, Andrew's putting his thumbs up, so he always pays a single room supplement when you go on holiday, don't you?
I'm going to guess that all the GT3 cars will have their own garage, unless you're someone like Car Collection.
Exactly.
And you might have a couple of cars.
Or your IDEX.
Andrew's disagreeing with that.
Or your IDEX Sport, where IDEC are sharing their garage.
Yeah.
The 911 Hairbear Porsche is sharing with Ram Racing, I think it is. Andrew can tell us now.
No, they're sharing with the
Pro Sport. That's right. Yeah.
Because they're mates. They're the two teams. I think some of the Pro Speed blokes used to work for Herbert, or anyway. I think they're both Bavarian and they're mates.
Yeah.
But I noticed, like our Sport, they've got their own garage.
Our Motorsport. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I noticed that the 2 cars that Rick Broikers might drive or might not are next to each other, so preventing
the 303 Seat and the
Ram
number 5 Ram Racing Mercedes.
I think
they're in the same garage, are they?
No,
they're next door to each other. You see, but the person that's worked out this garage plan has done it with a lot of forethought, actually. And I think, he's put people together that would get on or have a similar car, and I'm impressed with that.
It's like designing your table plan for a wedding, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
You want people to get on and not start fighting.
Yeah.
So don't mix families.
But I wonder what the premium is for having your own garage.
I forgot. It's on the web somewhere. If you look up on the Creventic website, it does tell you what the I say bonus payments. They're not bonus payments. They're extra.
It's exactly what we said. It's a single pit supplement.
Yeah. To gain you a little bit of extra space and some working area, I suppose.
Back to qualifying, because I was. Expressing concern earlier on about the AC Motorsport Audi RS3, the 888 car, Vincent Rademacher. The car has now gone out. Vincent has done his 2 laps, Stefan Perrin has done his 2 laps, and Alexandre Renato has done his 2 laps. So we've only just require Laurent Piguet to do his laps, and that car will have done all it needs to do in order to have qualified all of its drivers. Many of the other cars have also done their laps now, including, as we heard from the Ferrari team, the Aston Martin has had all 4 of its drivers in. Ram Racing's Mercedes has had all of its drivers in. The 911 Porsche has had its drivers in. Even the car collection car, which has 5 drivers, 33, they've all been out and done their laps. So the majority of the teams, I would say, have been out and done the laps they have to do. The other thing that's happened, of course, it's got drier. Adam Christodoulou has been keeping his powder dry and has gone fastest of all. So Adam Christodoulou now 159.435 knocks the Scuderia Praha Ferrari off the top of the list. Not that this matters, because qualifying for the grid happened earlier on. So this is only for the point of, say, bragging rights that Adam Christodoulou has gone fastest. But a 159.435 is only a few tenths of a second. In fact, it's 0.46, so less than a
0.46.
Yeah, 0.46 of a second, separating Christodoulou from Matteo Malicelli's best time. So that's the new 1-2. And as I say, the 3rd fastest car is the Ram Racing Mercedes. Joe Bradley is with one of those drivers I was just talking about, Adam Christodoulou's teammates. And I say Adam is top of the list. Whoever goes top of the list, Joe goes and talks to. Joe.
And I can assure you that is not planned. It's just pure coincidence. I've been trying to talk to somebody from the 85 Pro Sport Mercedes since I got here. Charles Putman I've caught lurking, relaxing in the back of the garage. Job done for tonight, Charles?
Through for tonight. Yeah, I think basically everyone is on our team. We have one more practice driver change to make, but that's just perfunctory.
That was a really exciting and fun qualifying session from where I was sitting. Bit different, I bet, from where you were. You guys just got pipped right at the very end. Adam did a cracking job.
Well, he did a wonderful job. In fact, we'll have to move out of the way of the car. It's rolling right in here.
All right, this is how live we are. Look at this. Having to move while the number 85, the very car that we're talking about, was on the provisional pole pretty much the whole session. And then Tom Onslow called in the Ram Racing. But it must bode very well for the race. You guys are very, very close on time. Yeah. It's all about that, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, it's every little bit in qualifying. And Adam is a great driver. Nathan has set the car up beautifully. We came right off of the truck really close, and when that happens, you know you're going to have a really good car for the weekend. So we felt really good with the car. Adam got out there, gave it a really good run, and got caught by a little bit of traffic, so we gave him a new set of stickers, waited a few minutes. He went out and he got really lucky on the traffic and got a really open lap, and we said, that's it. Nobody's going to touch that, but they showed us wrong, as so often happens in the last minute. Yeah.
We love sport. It must make a big difference. Adam's been with you guys on many occasions, and when everybody knows one another, it's like, I suppose it's like playing any sport, where as a team, you know how people are thinking, you know how people tick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, Adam's relatively new to us. He's only done, I think, 3 events so far this year with us, but we knew him before, just casually, as you do so many people in the paddock. We knew he was a good fit with the team personality-wise. And he's really been showing us that he's a very up-and-coming driver, and you know, some of us are a little long in the tooth on this team and sort of on the way down. He's still on the way up, but it works really well, so it's a good compliment.
And your thoughts going into the race? It's always, you know, people say, what importance, what significance does qualifying have for a 24-hour race? I'm sure qualifying's already forgotten and you guys are already thinking about the race.
Oh yeah, we're thinking the first turn of the first lap, that's where we're going to win this thing.
Absolutely, yeah, of course.
Now we've always, I think that's been one of our strong points, is we have a lot of experience on this team, both with our engineer and the drivers, and of course Pro Sport as a team is very experienced. A lot of endurance racing behind us in a lot of different venues. So we tend to be very disciplined and very patient and just kind of let the race unfold and just use that discipline to hopefully make it through those first really tough hours when there's so much unpleasant action.
Well, you guys know, I'm thinking of Dubai and the Porsche. Let's put that one away. Were you surprised by the quality of the field we have here this year at the 24 Hours of Barcelona?
Oh, not really. In fact, the reason we moved to the A3 field was we felt we had done really well with the 991s last year. We wanted to step up our level of competition to the level that was there in the A6. More cars, more depth of talent. And so, yeah, we came for the challenge and we enjoy it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely thriving it. Great to see you as ever, Charles. Good luck for the race tomorrow. No doubt speak to you on the grid.
Thank you so much. We'll see you out there.
Yeah, by the way, they have chosen to include Adam Christodoulou in all of the 24-hour races this year. So when they were at Silverstone, Navarra and Imola, it was just the three of them, the two Charleses, Putman and Espenlaub and Joe Foster. And then Adam's come in for Dubai, for Portimao a couple of months ago, and now for Barcelona. So that makes sense, and presumably we'll wait to see. But there's another 24-hour race to come, of course, at Kota. Although that's not the full 24-hour race. There will be a split, I believe. I know Creventic are really hopeful one day that could run as a full, proper...
And it wouldn't be the first time that a timetable of Creventic has changed between, you know, when it was first issued and when it came to race day.
That is very true.
I'm sure Adam told me that he had driven the Pro Sport Porsche once, a long time ago, at somewhere like Bathurst or something. So, you know, as Charles was saying there, he's been a friend of the team for a long time, and it's kind of come back to haunt him, come back to help him out. And with Adam's knowledge of Mercedes, it is a massive help to Pro Sport Performance, who are still getting used to that Mercedes, of course, having run the Porsche for so many years.
I mean, it must be great for Adam to become a specialist in a particular car, you know, whether that be... Because he used to drive the SLS, did he not? And then has become a real specialist in the AMG GT3. And there are then go-to drivers for your customer teams that pick a Mercedes and go, right, who's on the list? Oh, Adam Christodoulou, he knows the car. And all of a sudden, you've got someone who can start to tip off the rest in terms of setup and telemetry and just to know where the drivers could push a bit more.
And the other good thing as well, obviously, you know, coming from a single-seater background, Adam, you know, British driver, they start out, they all want to go to Formula One. That didn't happen, but, you know, Formula 3, Formula Renault, and then found his feet as a sports car driver, and now he's racing all over the world. And sometimes you think that some of these drivers they've just gone away. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you find they're back on ground, they're winning races and they're back again, and you recognise they've still got a very good career. And he's just going from strength to strength.
And I think, I mean, what happens with Adam, for example, he's kind of on Mercedes' list for customer support as something that Mercedes will offer you. So, you know, like they might say, oh, well, you know, you can try this tweak or you can try this set of spark plugs. Do you want to have Adam Christodoulou in the team? And so, you know, it kind of works well for Adam, but it works well for the relevant team that he happens to be going to, because you know, he's driven with the ABBA Mercedes team in the British GT Championship, and the same thing happened there. They were having difficulty with the car, and as you talk to Mercedes customer support, they say, well, let Adam come and drive the car for you, and that then kind of was a relationship that gelled and turned into a regular race seat for Adam in that car.
Yes, with Martin Short and Richard Neary.
It's now Richard Neary's team.
Yes. Because Martin has dropped away from the driving lineup.
Yeah, well, he's
I see. Yeah. Don't go any further. You need not. But no, it's not. Again, I suppose it's all about networking, isn't it, for Adam? And the more people he is well known to, the more work he gets, basically.
And the better he gets as a driver.
But also as a salesman of his talents as well, I think. I mean, the more clients you have, I mean, it's like being a hairdresser, I suppose. The more clients you have, the more your business thrives.
We're at 10 minutes to go before the end of the session. Andrew Marriott has
did you not see what I did there?
Yeah.
Adam's dad, I think it's his dad, he's a hairdresser.
Oh, right.
Come on.
Yeah, oh, very good.
I didn't know they were in the hairdressing business.
Christodoulou's in Birmingham. I've not been there, but I've walked past the shop many times.
One of the things about Adam, remember that he was successful in Europe. I think he won Formula Renault, did he not?
Yeah.
But then he went to the States and he won the Star Mazda series.
2009.
Hugely promoted by Mazda. Won it, you know, going away. And normally somebody does that next thing you know, they're in Indy Lights, and they won Indy Lights, and they're in
That's
IndyCar.
their route to stardom, isn't it?
But it didn't happen with Adam, and I'm not quite sure why. I must ask him about it. But,
yeah, it's not a guarantee, but like you say, you're 50. You feel like you should be 50% there.
And of course, you know, we got his nephew Ricky was racing pretty successfully as well. Ricky Christodoulou.
Yeah,
cousin.
The cousin. Yeah, did I say cousin? I meant to say cousin.
I knew you meant to say cousin. You said nephew.
Cousin.
Yeah, last time I saw Ricky was at Thruxton during, I think, the last Formula 3 season in the UK, although we have got a Formula 3 championship now at the BRDC F3.
Different Formula 3.
Proper Formula 3, I like to say. And I was joined in the main Thruxton commentary box by Ricky Christodoulou and Harry Tinknell, who were busy there driver coaching, I think, for Fortec and Carlin or other teams. And he's a good commentator, is Ricky.
And you get a good view from up there, so it was a good way to
were there very recently. But sadly for Ricky, he's not done a lot of racing of late.
No.
But he's still about, and he's still willing to accept work, I think, certainly for driver coaching. We are under the Code 6.
No, we're still racing, but nearly everybody has done what they need to do. So, let's say we've still got another 10 minutes of the session to go, but 80, if not 90% of the teams have qualified all their drivers and have returned to the garage.
Paul, I'd like you to check back on your wonderful system, because when I was sitting at the back of our commentary box, I think I noticed that Romain Vos did a very quick time in the wet. And he's obviously the gentleman driver, owns the car.
2 minutes 1.554.
Yeah, well,
that's so it was comparable to the time set by Tom Onslow Cole
and Breukers
and by Rick Breukers. But Tom, of course, went out when the track was at its wettest, so not necessarily comparable. But interesting that they put them in that order, and of course that will give Ramon a huge psychological boost to be right there on the pace. So yes, Ramon did a few more laps than the other drivers of the Ram Mercedes did. But yeah, his lap time's right there. I mean, that Ram car, a very strong contender for the 24 hours.
He only moved up to this level really last year, didn't he? I think we first saw him in Creventic here. We were impressed with him then. But he's got an interesting business. He's a property developer, and the company builds shopping centres, but he build them in the Czech Republic. And he's Dutch, so I don't know how that works out. But I went on their website. It's a very impressive company. You know, sometimes you wonder about but you can just tell from a website that this is a serious business that Ramon runs. But
building shopping centres suggests it's quite big somehow.
Yeah.
So that's the day job of Raymond Leonard Vos, to give him his full name, and he and Tom Onslow Cole have been racing for a good couple of years now. They spent the season in the Michelin Le Mans Cup and lots of other places to go GT3 racing too. But I think, having people like Jelmer Berman as part of that lineup now can only yet further improve Raymond Vos, who is no slouch, and he proved that at Imola last year when they led the race and Raymond was at the wheel. And then they had some bad luck towards the end of it. But if the stars align this weekend, they are easily favourites.
Yeah, Onslow Cole's going to have to learn Dutch, isn't he, now? With 3 other drivers all speaking in...
Well, the Dutch know English far better than I would suggest.
Certainly do.
Tom might know, their mother tongue. Stefan Aust now at the wheel of car 33, the Audi R8 LMS from Car Collection Motorsport. And are we getting back into a situation where the AMs are dominating? No, not really. First, 5th, 7th and 8th, the A6 AM cars.
I think that's probably because just of the way that the driver sequencing went, that a lot of the pro teams the AM teams put their pro driver in first when the track was at its wettest, so they weren't able to take the benefit of the track as it's dried out, whereas the pro teams have generally got a wider spread of skill across the driver lineup, so are able to put in the quicker times as the session has gone on.
I noticed that the Swiss team, number 15, have
that's
added...
the name of the team,
yes,
we should emphasise.
Added another Swiss driver, Joel Comathius, to the team, who did a full season on Formula 3000. But from where I come from, he's better known for his... I've got to get this right. It's his great uncle or something like that, who was Florian Comathius, who was one of the greatest sidecar racers of all time and won the TT and so on. Comathius, a famous name. And actually, Joel Comathius did a season racing in the United States in what was then kart.
Oh, right. Okay.
So he's got a good CV behind him. Good man to have in a car like he's done a couple of Le Mans, one of them only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, unfortunately his season didn't start so well because he was fully signed up with Christian Reed and Proton, and they were all at Ricard at the start of the year with these brand new customer 911s, one of the first with the gearbox and engine reverse. So obviously they've been run as pro cars, but this is the first year they've been available as AMs. He wrote one of those chassis off at Ricard, and Christian Reed politely showed him the door suddenly.
I didn't know that. He had raced for Reed previously at Le Mans. So
yes, and there was a good relationship there, but that didn't impress Christian Reed, as you might rightly have spotted. And Joel has been looking for obviously other opportunities through the course of the year. So pleased to see him there. He was born in Lugano, Switzerland, so he'll fit right in at Swiss team. And racing with some guys that are more familiar with Lamborghinis. I mean, Roberto Pampanini.
Yeah, he's definitely a Lamborghini expert, isn't he?
But as are the other. I mean, Mauro Calamia is part of that team, and he's raced Lambos with the Italian Roberto. And actually, Camathia's bringing more Porsche experience than anything with Mercedes, so they're all on a little bit of a learning curve there, I would suggest.
When we first saw them at Navarra, I think they first popped out of the woodwork, didn't they? We did ask them about Swiss team, and couldn't they thought of something a little bit more interesting? Oh no, we are a Swiss team. We've got a Swiss team.
That's how the Swiss are.
All right, then. Yeah, why not? Well, at least put a bloody red and white cross on it.
Yes, I mean, I think the thing with Switzerland, of course, is that it's really three countries in one, isn't it? Because you've got the German part, the French part, and the Italian part. And there are, having lived in Lugano for a period of time, the local mentality was far closer to Italy than it was to either France or Germany. But the car is going to the car collection car, which you started off by mentioning, Johnny, with the Stefan Aust being the fifth driver completing his stint. He's now completed his stint. He's up at the refueling station. Quite a long stint from him. 12 laps he did behind the wheel, so a lot more than his minimum requirement was. So maybe the plan is to put him in the car for a lot of the night running, and he was just getting used to that. So a good long stint from him, but he is now refueling, and we got 3.5 minutes only of this session remaining.
A little ponder from pit lane, Andy.
Oh yes.
GT4. Obviously we've got the one Mercedes in it, which we've seen, which is being run by the Zolder-based team.
Yeah.
And then in the same class, we've got Ginetta G55s from Leeds. I wonder what the relative costs of those two cars are, because the lap time's not that much different. Remember the GT... we'll believe that Joe Bradley has got Christian Frankenhood down with him, so we'll let him carry on, then we'll carry on the conversation afterwards.
All right, that makes sense.
Joe?
Yeah, Christian, I saw the number one Mercedes, the Hofer team Mercedes, call it quits early in tonight's practice. Job done, like pretty much a lot of people have at this session.
Well, it's not a session you can test anything, you know. It's still wet, it's still damp. Well, it says Saturday, Sunday it will be dry, so you can do anything on the car, but it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, then why everybody says, okay, we do the mandatory 2 laps in the night and that's it.
Save the car.
Save the car, and you know, in these conditions you never know if you maybe spin off the track or something like that. You know, it's on the track it's okay, but if you go on the curb or that sort of thing, so you don't want to take any risk. And you know, today it's nothing, or the night practice it counts for nothing, and tomorrow it's a race, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, and you guys make a habit of appearing on the podium. You've been on pretty much every step of the podium along the way the last 2 or 3 seasons. How are you going to do that this weekend? It's such a quality field. It's such a, 49 cars around this 2.8 mile circuit. It's going to be tricky.
Well, it's always said that the first 2 sectors are quite wide and wide long corners, so that's easier to overtake. Only the last sector is really narrow and really a lot of small corners, really tough corners. And so it's easy to overtake or make a mistake or when overtaking a car. So there you need to take it easy. The rest of the race will... You don't have really a lot of big curbs or that sort of thing, only in the last chicane, so don't touch those, and normally the car would stay until the end, and yeah, that's where you need to be more careful of, actually.
And you had a great qualifying. You appeared there right up on the top of the timing screens, and then kind of, it sort of, I think you finished 5th, did you? Or 6th?
4th.
Qualified.
Oh, yeah, come on.
Was it 4th?
Oh, no.
Hey, I've got a lot of numbers to think about. You guys finished 4th,
No.
but you were second for a little while. Was how happy were you with that lap?
It was good. The lap was good. From this morning on, we said, okay, we don't have to really we have a basic setup where we work on, but I think we should have had more like rake on the car, more aero on this track. So we have a good balance. The car is good, but for the ultimate lap, so like Adam and Tom did, it was not possible. But okay, really happy with P4, and tomorrow's the race. It's a long race, and we will see what happens.
A lot could happen. Like you said, the early part of this lap it's got a lot of flow, a lot of momentum. But what's it going to be when we come round to complete the lap through that really tight chicane bit? Hopefully things will have settled down. Are you already thinking along those lines about? I take it you're starting, by the way.
Yeah, I'm doing a start. Yes.
Yeah. So you think about how you're going to address that first lap, and if the two cars in front of you start hitting each other, is that what a racing driver thinks about the eve of a race?
A little bit. Of course, you think about the start, what possibilities that can happen. You have like maybe 5 or 10 scenarios that you think, okay, what will happen in the first lap? But at the end, it's 24 hours, so it's not, the first corner it's not important, first lap is not important, but still, you're a racing driver, and when the light goes out on green, and you think, okay, I need to be first after the first lap. But of course, with a little bit of thinking, okay, it's still 24 hours, and Tom and Adam are also experienced drivers, and also Jack Dennis. So they know what to do, and they don't make any silly things. So it will be okay, but it will be a little bit of a fight. That's always what we want. It's to have a little bit of fun as well on the way.
Absolutely, we're going to love that from where we're sitting. Thanks for talking to us, Christian. We're going to see you on the grid, no doubt, and here's to a great race for the Hofer team. Checkered flag out to end night practice. So the race is next.
Race is next until tomorrow.
Thanks,
Yeah,
have a good sleep.
Thanks.
Not
Thanks,
quite
Jack.
right now.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, thankfully, at midday.
That guy, Christian Frankenhout, is really under the radar. He is a fantastic racing driver. I'm a little bit surprised it isn't at a higher level, because he always delivers. He's hugely consistent. He's very clever. He's brilliant through the traffic. And you know what I mean? He's in Creventic, which is great, but I'm surprised he isn't in a WEC tomorrow. He's a terrific driver.
Yeah.
And just the other thing I wanted to say, look at that shot now. Look at that turbo glowing at the back of that KTM. That's what I love about night racing.
Yeah, that's the Audi turbocharged inline 4 in the back of the middle of the KTM. These are the KTM crossbows built in Graz in Austria that we've been talking so much about, and we got to the bottom of the K.
Oh yeah, well we did, but we got it wrong. Right, turn lovers put me further right. It wasn't the 3 initials, because the M is the town where they come from.
Yes, Fabian.
So
yes.
it was a bit more complicated than I made out. But anyway, still a good story.
So that's a brief history of KTM and the fact that they make both sort of track day cars, the KTM Crossbow, and also a big motorcycle manufacturer, of course, the biggest in Europe, you said, didn't you?
And of course, this is their new sort of coupe, isn't it? Because most of the crossbows we've seen are open.
They have been, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can buy that car for the road even, but that's their GT4 car. And we're enjoying seeing them racing.
Yeah, I remember Rory Butcher racing an open version as far back in the British GT as something like 2008, I think.
So. But they use them a lot in the Race of Champions, of course. So people like Coulthard, all kinds of people have hustled those things
they
around.
are. I mean,
little stadiums in Beijing, and I seem to remember them. One of my finest hours, well, not finest, most memorable commentaries, alongside Murray Walker for Sky at a Race of Champions, 2 years running, and I'm pretty sure KTMs were running some of the time at that Race of Champs.
Yeah, I was right. Launched at the Geneva Motor Show in 2008, so they're 10 years old now, actually, although the design has come on an awful lot. And as you say, they have this fantastic roof that basically opens up like a clamshell.
We said it before, it's like a bomb bug.
It is like a Bond bug.
It's just like a bomb bug, which are also orange. And I famously, doing the road test for Motoring News, put one on its side in front of a dole queue. Literally, the dole queue saw this
is true,
thing
folks. I've heard this
skidding
story
down
many
the
times, so
road
it must be
on
true.
its side, and with the photographer John Dunbar on board, and I blame him because he got in the car, he changed the weight distribution. Anyway, we sort of, I said push, and we sort of pushed our bodies forward, and the thing dropped back on its wheels, and I drove back down Bonhill Street. A lot of orange fiberglass being scattered as I went.
But so the KTMs then, although they are designed as GT4 cars, having their own series, they're not actually running in the GT4 class, which brings us nicely back to what we were talking about before, about the single Mercedes GT4 and the 3 Ginettas which are out there, being led by the car that has Mike Simpson of Ginetta driving in it, the 446 car, which ended up the quickest in that session. For the purposes of this race, though, the GT4 cars are part of the GT Endurance Series, or the GT Series, so they get put into that division, not the touring car division.
Yeah, we heard Mike Simpson say, didn't we, that the Colin White cars have got splitters which aren't official. They've done their own thing on the car, and that's why they're not in GT4.
Speaking of the Colin White cars, one of which is still circulating, despite now the checkered flag having
been out for 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, I just wonder whether this car on an outlap now, and having not seen the flag. What I can't tell you is, well, it's received the checkered flag and is continuing to go round, but Marshall's now stepping down from post, which is interesting because we still have a live track. It's 4th in the session, at least in the TC. No, I don't know why that 4 is illuminated on the side of the car, because it finished the session fastest of the TCE series cars.
They've got big Mustang engine in, if I remember. That's the power unit.
Oh, right.
It's basically the engine from a Mustang.
So it's not the Ford Cyclone engine that used to power Ginettas, the V6?
No, I don't think so.
3.7
no,
V6.
I think that's a Mustang engine, but we better check that out.
V80, but
it's Colin White behind the wheel.
Okay.
So he's got no excuse, but equally it may be.
Well, he has got an excuse because there's a few more laps being done here. Everyone's desperate for track time.
Prevent it might send him an invoice.
So he'll have to step up before the race director as a result. I think they tend to take, certainly in the UK, a very dim view of missing the checkered flag. And like all flag signals, it's kind of rule 1 is do what the flag signals say, and rule 2 is
do what the flag signals say.
Do what the flag signals say. Anyway.
There we are. Session now properly done and dusted. I like the rear end of that Ginetta, by the way, which is
the Romania one.
I must ask
446.
I must ask Mike Simpson how much one of those does actually cost in that trim.
Not just the blue light on the back, the whole Ginetta G55 you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, Team Romania are here, which is great to see, and we can now bring you the standings after night practice, this 90-minute session. It was Pro Sport Performance that missed out on the qualification pole position a little earlier on. I wonder whether that's a bit of recompense for them. The 85 Mercedes tops the times by 46 thousandths of a second from the Bohemia Energy Racing with Scuderia Praha Ferrari 488, car number 11. Third fastest was the Ram Racing Mercedes that did take pole earlier on, and another AMG. Fourth fastest, the Roll Goethe Rofco Racing example. Car Collection Motorsport, their 34 Audi was fifth fastest, ahead of the Herbert Motorsport Porsche. R Motorsports Aston, seventh fastest. The Car Collection, the other Audi, number 33, was eighth, ahead of Edex Sports Mercedes and the Swiss team with their AMG. 11th quickest, Lippert Motorsport in the best SPX car. The best 991 was 15th fastest from French squad Edex Sport, who are massive in yacht racing as well. They've got a slightly older Cup car, the Mark 1 this weekend, number 75, so that means it's a 3.8 litre engine rather than the 4 litre flat 6. GT4 is the Endurance Team Romania then, with the extra decoration for overnight running. That 446 Ginetta was 16th fastest, but the best of the GT4. Second fastest in that class was the QSR Racing School Mercedes GT4 car 254, and completing the top 20, the Italian squad EB Motors with their Porsche. And completing the GT Series cars, Hoffa Racing down in 21st, but that's not an immediate concern to Christian Frankenhout and the rest of the squad. NM Racing team continue the GT4 lineup. 215 was 22nd, ahead of the other GT4 from Nova Race. And a couple of SPX cars towards the tail end of the GT Series entry. VDS Racing with dramas actually when the car conked out at the end of the pit lane. And the Vortex V8 car 204, which has been running in Creventic, the series, for a number of years now. The GT Series completed by Porsche Lorient Racing in number 64. So that's the rundown for GT Series. Yes, Fabian, I'm going to struggle to talk to you and also do commentary. And we now look back on the highlights for the night practice session. Before we get to the highlights, let's do the standings for the TCE series, and it's two SP3 cars that top the tyres, both of Colin White's Ginetta G55s. 178, which is Colin's car, ahead of 278, which on some entry lists he was shown as being a driver, but that's not going to be the case now. Team Old Trail Peugeot, the best of the TCRs, car 308. They've got a couple of their 308 Racing Cup cars here this weekend, ahead of the Kawasaki Racing by Baz Cooten Cupra, number 155. The first of two Monlau competition Cupras was 5th fastest, ahead of the sister car 6th. BPM Racing, another Cupra, was 7th fastest. It's Cupra City here with 175, 8th fastest. Then the AC Motorsport Audi, which qualified 2nd of the TCRs earlier on today. That was 9th, ahead of the Baporo Motorsport Audi, 10th. 11th quickest was the Red Camel Jordans.NL, the bright orange 303. There's a Mark Cars Australia Audi here this weekend. That was 12th fastest, ahead of a couple more Audis from TFT, Top Lock Racing and Bonk Motorsport. Hoffer with another Bonk BMW this time was 15th fastest. That was the best of the two A3 cars. And another SP3 machine, the BMW M4 from Munkhoff Racing, 19th fastest. Synchro Motorsports Honda Civic FK8 was 20th. And to complete the TCE series car, ATEC Racing's Seat was 21st. That's car 55. Now we can catch the highlights of 90 minutes of night practice. So a real up and down session for night practice that started in the wet and finished in the dry. The times were getting quicker and quicker. How much of an indication do they give us to tomorrow's overnight stint, I wonder, for the 20th running of the 24 Hours of Barcelona? Well, there's only one way to find out. That's to tune in tomorrow with our live stream starting at 11:25 Central European Summer Time. And we obviously are going all the way through overnight, although our commentary will cease at 11 p.m. Saturday and continue at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. But we'll have all the onboards covering the night stints for this 2018 version of the 24 Hours of Barcelona. We'll take you to the flag, of course, with full commentary and then coverage of the podiums as well. Lots to look forward to then. Midday start tomorrow, but our build-up begins at 11:25. We will no doubt see you tomorrow. From all of the team, a very good night.